This week, you guys are going to be learning about the CSS box model and how to position these boxes on your page in a variety of ways. Part of what we are going to be covering is a responsive layout called Flexbox. So there's basically three different responsive layouts that we will be using in this class. So you'll be learning about Flexbox this week. And then in upcoming weeks, we are going to learn about CSS Grid and another layout that has been renamed to Float. So it used to be called, I believe, Grid View, and now they're calling it Float. So even if the code doesn't change, the names may change. So moving forward here, I did include the web-based readings that deal with box, the CSS box, and the layouts. And so we have something called a traditional box, and then we have the flex box that I was talking about. Okay, and so these are the different pages that you need to read. And then as far as the CSS goes, we're focusing on the CSS for these layouts. Then we have the lecture demo. And so basically, we're going to go through, what is a box and what is a traditional layout versus a flex box layout, and how we can control the layout using our CSS. And so that's basically what we are going to be covering. So you will learn a little bit more about CSS because Flexbox is a CSS layout. So we're going to take some of those CSS commands that we covered in previous weeks, and we are going to be applying them now to specific layouts. Okay, so as you go through here, you'll be learning different concepts. And then I have lots and lots of examples for you to look at and links to the interactive sites so that you can practice. And honestly, it's only through practice that you guys are really going to learn what these different commands do. So, if you go in here, let me make this a little bit smaller. Now you can see that the display here is inline. And so you can see that it lines up horizontally. Okay, and so if we change it to block, which would have been the default, you can see that's a vertical layout. And none actually is going to hide everything. And so we can do inline flex. Okay, which kind of looks the same as inline, but it's used for more of a flex box layout. So you can see that as we change the size, it does make adjustments. So it's going to try to go across, but if it can't, it will wrap, which is kind of what a flex box does. And we can change it to inline block. Okay, which is also looks kind of similar. The differences here you can kind of read about. Inline flex is specifically for mobile. Okay, and so if you wanted it inline, which is this horizontal, I would use inline flex. Because, and we'll be talking about this later in the course, but when you are designing your site, designing for mobile is a good idea. A majority of the people viewing it could be on a mobile device. And if it looks good on mobile, then it's also going to look good on the desktop. Okay, so designing for the mobile display kind of makes sense. Okay, so we'll go through here. You'll learn lots of different concepts like parent and child blocks, and then there's examples. And then if I felt like it would benefit you to see the example on its own page, I have a link for that as well. And then if you right click and go to view page source, you can actually see the HTML and more importantly, the CSS that I used. And you can see that this is the parent, okay, that section. And then inside the section, we have another one, which is the child. Okay, so make sure you go through that, work on those interactive exercises. Then you'll have a pretty good grasp of the box model and Flexbox. And then to kind of solidify everything for you, you're going to do the textbook assignment, which is more directive with the videos. And there's very specific exercises you need to complete. I do give you a couple of starter documents. And with the farm, there are several graphics that you're going to want to download. Those should go in your Lesson 6 media folder. The HTML should just go into Lesson 6. I'm also giving you a CSS file, an external file that goes kind of with your song snippets up here. That will go into a Lesson 6 CSS folder. And please remember, all of this is case sensitive. And so when you're looking at this, I do have a link in song snippets already for the CSS. And I am assuming that your CSS folder is lowercase, that you've named it lowercase CSS. If you don't name it that way, then you are going to have to adjust this link, okay? Because it won't work. Things are all case sensitive when you're on the web. So moving right along here, there are videos that go with every single task that will explain to you what you're doing. To try to make this easier, I did try to highlight changes you need to make to the code. And this little farm document, we are actually using to do the traditional box, but then you'll also use it for Flexbox and absolute positioning. So it is important that you follow the directions. And, when it tells you to save the file using a different name, that you do that. So for this one, you're using farm.html. Okay, and you'll continue to add whatever is shown here. Okay, and then you'll save all those changes. And here's where you're going to make a copy of it. And you're going to call it Farm Flexbox. Okay, so these directions tell you how to save it under a different name. Make sure you save your changes first, and then you can save it as Farm Flexbox. Okay, then make sure Farm Flexbox is the document you are editing. And then you can go through and make changes to convert the traditional box into a Flexbox. Okay, and then make sure that your Flexbox has been saved, and then you're going to close it. And then you're going to open that first farm file, and it's just farm.html, and you're going to save it as farm position. Okay, and then you're going to make sure that is the one that you're editing. And then for this one, you're going to use absolute positioning. Okay, and so these are the settings that you're going to use for that. And this is what it should look like when you're done. And then you're going to move on to the song snippet file. Okay, and so you'll just follow the directions for this. And again, that's going to end up being Flexbox. Okay, and then when you're done, you will transfer those files to the web. For the lab assignment, there's two parts to this. The first part is creating a traditional box page, and the second part is creating a Flexbox page. And the content can be the same. Okay, so you don't have to have different content, and it can kind of be whatever you want as long as the layout is, for the first one, you have a layout that is traditional, and for the second, you have a layout that is a Flexbox. And I've kind of given you like a skeleton here of how you can set up your page. Okay, and you can see we've got article here, and within article, we have several sections. So article would be like our parent, and the sections would be the children, if you want to view them that way. I do have an example that I actually used for an exploration day. And this is an example of a traditional box. Okay, and so if you view the page source, okay, you can kind of see that that skeleton that I gave you is basically what I've used here. Here is my CSS. Okay, you can see I turned the float off on the footer. The sections are the ones that are the children elements that need to float. So that is what is turned on here. Okay, so you can kind of look at that and, adjust it for your own content. So you guys are going to be doing your own thing here. Then I took basically that same content and I converted it over to Flexbox. So I have a separate external style sheet for Flexbox. So I had to change my link at the top. And then for this one, I had to make article the parent. And that's where I have display flex. And then in the sections, those are the child elements. Those are set to flex 1. And I took float out because float is not Flexbox. Okay, so those changes are really important. Also with Flexbox, you should have some kind of minimum or maximum width and height. So for me, I didn't care how wide or tall they were, but I didn't want them to go below 150 pixels in the width, and I didn't want the height to be smaller than 200. So I set the boundaries on the minimum. But here is this one, and already you can tell it looks a little bit different, right? Because Flexbox, you can tell, and especially if you start adjusting the size of your screen. Okay, so that is Flexbox. And I did give you a link to the CSS as well. And kind of the important thing is that there is no float in here. Okay, because it's Flexbox. So that is the assignment. Once you finish those 2 pages, you are going to update your assignment page. In the textbook section, you will add links to your different exercises, and then you'll do the same thing for the lab assignments. Okay, and then you'll transfer everything up to the web. And if you have any problems with anything at all, let me know. Make sure it's transferred to the web, and I will take a look at it. For those of you that find Flexbox a little more difficult, I do have some resources here, and I tried to pick fun ones. Flexbox Froggy is basically a game. And so if you play this, it kind of gets you used to using some of these Flexbox commands, and you key the command in, hit next, and little froggy moves. So I think some of these you will find to be fun. And so, check them out, especially if you are struggling understanding all the different Flexbox commands. Have a great week, and let me know if you guys have any questions at all.